I was a little bit surprised to see so many people on the second conference day in the morning. So good job. Thanks for showing up. I looked in the mirror this morning and realized I'm more turning into the stereotype of a founder. You know, I started wearing turtleneck shirts. I switched to a MacBook recently. I tried to make more inspiring speeches. And I think this is what this is all about in the end, right? I can see I'm changing my own behavior. You know, I'm trying to align myself more with the culture of the startup that I kind of created, but that is evolving. And this is basically what I will be talking about, right? How we use our own AI, not just within our company, but obviously also for our clients to basically drive more sustainable culture change.
Excuse me, just for a second. We will have another session in the other room. So now this was only here. So if anyone wants to join the Auntie presentation, and later on we have also some more from the change management stream. So anyone wants
no
to
judgment
move over there?
if you want to leave.
Don't want to steal your audience.
I'll give you a minute or so.
Thank you.
Feel free to stay also, of course.
Cool. That's good luck for me. I guess I get more audience than I would have gotten otherwise. And part of this cliche of being a founder, I nowadays I don't do vacations anymore. I do workations. You know, I don't really work there much, but it just sounds more fancy. And like a few weeks ago, I did one of these vacations in Bali, where I just basically didn't do anything except for sit at the beach. And after a few days, I started seeing all these surfer boys out there in the waves, like those Australian, you know, super muscular dudes surfing the waves. And I was just sitting on the beach and I felt a little bit useless. And so I said, okay, how hard can this be, right? I mean, this looks doable, right? So I rented myself a surfboard and basically swam out to the waves. And by the time I made it there, I was already completely dehydrated and exhausted. And then basically the first wave hit me, right? And it basically got me under the surface, and I was there for 10-15 seconds, you know, could hardly breathe. And then at some point I made it up again. And the moment I started breathing again, the next wave hit me, right? And it dragged me down again. And this happened like 3 or 4 times. And I think then after 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, I was somewhere spit out at the beach, you know, and this was my overall surfing experience. And I for the rest of the day, I just sat at the beach feeling miserable at looking at those Australian surfer boys that I now don't like anymore. And then I realized, well, this is basically what we've been through all together over the last few years, and also what our clients have been through, right? So basically they just wanted to have a nice day at the beach, and some of our clients are very good at swimming, obviously. Companies like, well, Porsche, they know what they're doing, or Tata Consulting, 600,000 consultants. There's some other car companies that are not on there. All companies are very good at what they're doing. ADAC, sort of the German counterpart of UMTC. But the problem they're now having is that suddenly they being hit after another wave of change, of disruption, right? Starting with COVID, starting with the war, obviously, supply chain issues that they're having. You know, our car industry clients are very anxiously looking towards China, what's happening there. There's a recession looming, right? And whenever they think they went through one wave of stress and crisis, you know, the next wave hits them, right? And now what they all trying to do is to establish a culture that embraces disruption, right? And that's how the keynote yesterday started, right? They tried to be more open towards disruption. They tried to be more dynamic, and in the end, they try basically not to drown, right? And as you all know, you've probably seen these numbers before, right? But it's so difficult to transform your culture, right? 70% of culture transformation projects tend to fail, right? And the likelihood of you as an established conservative company to just change your culture towards a more innovative culture, you know, is just as likely as me learning to surf within one day. Is this music coming from my phone? Oh, okay, that's the Apple YouTube. So I was wondering where the music was coming from. That's not part of the show. And there's obviously a lot of horrible consequences of that, right? We see that 46% of new hires fail within 18 months after you bring these people on board. And this is US data. The thing is, in the US, if people don't, integrate into your company, you just tend to fire them, right? The problem is in Germany and Europe that a lot of the people you bring in that don't fit into the culture that you want to build, they might actually stay, right? And then problems get even worse. We see that 70% of US employees end up disengaged at work, right? They don't identify with the culture they're working for. This obviously includes blue-collar jobs, right? There the problem is more severe than in a lot of more sort of higher skilled focused organizations. But what we see is that basically most of this lack in match between talent expectations and culture is what is causing basically these failed HR decisions, right? And the reason for that is, I guess it's in a sense obvious, and Martin from Sandoz yesterday talked about it for half an hour, so I don't want to dig too deep, but culture is about behavior, right? And in the past, a lot of organizations view that culture as a top-down management decision where you sit in a board and you say, we want to be more like Google, we want to be more like Apple. At Sandoz, they tried to copy the Microsoft management model, right? And they then hope that somehow, step by step, the whole culture will be more like Google, right? But in reality, you need to change individual level behavior, right? You need to change the behavior of, like Tata, one of our clients, has 600,000 employees, right? How can you change the behavior of 600,000 people within the time pressure that you have nowadays? And the problem is these big enterprises, they don't know much about the behavior of their people at all, right? People nowadays work remotely, they work from home, they work all around the world. There's very limited data on what people actually do, how they behave. A lot of companies actually in a sense have no clue who's actually working for them, right? And this is where we come into play. So we are a university spin-off. So my co-founder Christoph and I, we used to be PhD students at the Technical University in Munich, did a little bit of research also at MIT and the University of Tokyo, where we spent some time mostly for the food, I guess. And for us, it was always about understanding organizational behavior and making it measurable and controllable to some extent, right? And what we learned as part of our research is that in order to understand behavior, you need to observe people. The only way to really know what people are doing, how they behave, what they're really about is to interact with them, right? But the problem is it's very difficult to observe 10,000s, potentially hundreds of thousands of people, right? At Novartis, they hired, it seems, a lot of coaches. They brought 5,000 people into trainings for months. I mean, this is enormous cost, right? But this is something that can't be done in most organizations. And we thought about, can we use AI? Can we use machine learning to basically take over that part and become more and more effective at explaining, predicting, and influencing behavior? And so we started developing an AI that basically understands human behavior, human personality from video data, right? You give our AI a video of yourself, and our AI can tell you very quickly, very effectively, at very low cost comparatively, who you are, how you come across, what kind of personality you show, and to which extent your behavior that you show is aligned with the culture of your organization. What we build around this AI is what we call a behavioral intelligence platform. So we basically build a lot of features around this technology to make it work in a different range of use cases, including internal assessments, including hiring processes, but mostly development, training, onboarding procedures. And basically what we did is we started combining our AI with interactive video simulations where we simulate typical everyday situations. Could be a client interaction, a team interaction, could be, you as a superior talking to a team member. It could be you as a salesperson trying to sell a product. So we simulate typical everyday situations, but we use the AI to basically access your webcam, your microphone while you interact with our simulations, and we will give you data-driven, highly objective feedback, right? So the AI automatically understands what you say, it looks into your face, it understands your facial expression, your emotions, how you communicate, how effectively you communicate, right? What kind of wording you use, to which extent the wording matches the culture of the organization, and it will give you feedback, like very descriptive in the beginning, right? It will tell you what you said, how you said it, and then it will start putting that into the context of your job, of your organization. And there we work with scientifically validated models like the Big Five personality model, where nowadays with more than 90% accuracy we can determine, for instance, if you're being perceived as extroverted or introverted, as open, as conscientious, or as agreeable. You know, like, would a client that interacts with you perceive you as friendly, as trustworthy, or would the client perceive you as aggressive, maybe a little bit pushy, right? So these are things we can predict very precisely. We can aggregate all this information to predict how effective you are at communicating, and we can match that to the culture of your organization, right? And just keep in mind, all these assessments, these video simulations take place in a psychologically safe environment, right? You can do this at home. We see people, you know, doing these video simulations sometimes up to 50 times in a row privately at home, because they're really yearning for this kind of feedback, right? They want to know how they're being perceived by others, but at the same time, a lot of people are a little bit resistant to coaching, and they don't want to really, you know, be judged by other people, but they accept the data that the AI provides them with. And of course, this is scalable, right? So the beauty of it is, once you create these simulations, nowadays you can actually create them AI generated. You don't even need to work with actors to play your clients. You can work with deepfake videos that you can basically generate based on text elements that you might already have. And this way you can roll out a training globally among 10,000, hundreds of thousands of employees, basically in principle within a few hours, if you want, right? And just to give you an example for how this is being used. So this is an example from a Munich-based automotive group. You all know them. If you're a salesperson in this company in the US, for instance, or in Germany, in the UK right now, we will invite you to take part in regular video simulations where we will simulate typical clients that will challenge you about your product line and about your company. So this client, he's coming into your car dealership and he's telling you, well, I just come from the Tesla store, and aren't you guys way behind Tesla? What is this even about? What are you guys doing here, right? And we basically will analyze your response to that, right? And we'll see to which extent you as an employee are able to convince this client, right? And then we will give you feedback about what you did well, right? We will show you your video. You will see, you know, what you did well, what didn't work. We will show you the transcript of what you said, and then we will start looking for messaging, right? We will compare the language that you use, for instance, with the language that this car company wants to see in this situation. We will align that with the culture goals that the organization set for itself. This company wants to be a lot more customer-centric. You know, they know Tesla doesn't have service. Tesla doesn't even have proper salespeople. So they know their chance to stand out is to be more customer-centric, to be more outgoing, to be more likable in a sense. But they know their people are car salespeople, and let's be honest, nobody really likes car salespeople. There's the stereotype of a car salesperson, and it's not very positive, right? So they try to change that by basically teaching car dealers to be more, to act more like consultants and less like conventional salespeople, right? And well, one of the challenges we have when we work with clients is that, first of all, we need to understand where they want to move the organization, right? A lot of our clients don't even know what culture they want to have, right? I mean, if you ask the management, they always say we want to be like Google, but does that really make sense for a car company, right? Does this really make sense for whatever ADAC to try to be like Google? You know, is that really realistic? Probably not, right? So what we do with these clients is we invite people from within the organization that already work in these organizations into our video simulations, and we analyze the behavior of the best people within the organization. So in sales, that's very simple. You just take a batch of the best salespeople of the country, and we now did that at the car company in, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 markets. And you start playing these role plays with them, and you start looking for patterns, right? Is there certain things they do differently from all the other people in the organization? And then you quickly find out, well, it turns out the best car salespeople, yes, there are certain success recipes. They know how to pitch their product. You know, they usually are very adaptable in the way how they pitch the product, right? They don't just sell technology, but they in a sense sell emotions, right? And you can identify this, right? And this this is what forms the success culture of the organization, right? So we take these top performers as a benchmark. Sometimes we also try to move the top performers, but most of the time we really just take the top performers at the benchmark and we say, now let's take this benchmark and integrate it into the hiring, onboarding, and training procedure and try to get every other talent in the organization to get to the same level, right? And in hiring, you basically invite, talents, applicants into similar video simulations. They're a bit simplified, right? And you see to which extent their behavior matches the behavior of the best performers, right? Do they show personality traits, behavioral patterns that match the culture? In onboarding and training, you basically identify best practices among the top performers, right? And then you invite the rest of the team and you let them do these assessments again and again and again, right? You give them feedback, anonymous feedback in a sense, right? And this way they can adapt their behavior, they can benchmark themselves, they know where they stand, and they start improving. And the interesting thing is the more people you get into the system, right, the more data you get, the better you understand what your culture is really about. And then it becomes a strategic weapon where people on the board level really use the technology to basically measure to which extent their transformation, in the case of the car company, they want to be more customer-centric, right? So they measure to which extent they're really becoming more customer-centric, right? And there's certain effects you can directly observe. So the moment we introduce the technologies, there's of course a lot of KPIs that we can look at and that directly show effects. Like for instance, you see that talent decisions get faster. The companies, they start hiring for culture suddenly, and they can make these hiring decisions a lot faster because they can use the technology to pre-assess talents, right? They basically just need half as many job interviews as they did in the past. So you can obviously save a lot of cost also on onboarding and training. You can replace existing sales trainings and so on. But I think the more interesting thing is the midterm and long-term effects that we observe. And one thing we observe is that the companies that work with us, they reduce their mishiring rate. So especially in sales positions, you have enormous rates in mishires because it's so difficult to understand upfront if a person is going to be a good salesperson. Not sure if anyone here has ever hired salespeople, but it's incredibly difficult from a CV to understand if this person will sell, right? They sell themselves, yeah, and you hope that the fact that they can sell themselves means they can sell your product, but it's not that strongly correlated, unfortunately. Yeah. And quite often we observe that the patterns of the success performance that we see are the opposite of what the management thought, right? So the best salespeople in a lot of companies are rather introverted, very empathic, very careful people, not aggressive at all. But the recruitment teams and the sales managers, they hire those aggressive, especially in the US, white teasy, like very showmansy people, and hope that those work out. And those people tend to stay quite long in the organization because they continuously sell themselves, but they don't sell the product, right? And we observe enormous performance improvement. And please don't read this number wrong. That doesn't mean your sales numbers will double with us. This means that 90% of the people using the technology show some kind of performance improvement. How big this improvement is varies a lot, depends on the use case. In sales, you can measure it very precisely. In leadership service teams, it's a little bit more difficult to really measure what effect the technology really had on the performance. But what we see is that the behavior is changing and that it's more aligned basically with the cultural goal of the organization. And this is basically the end of it. I still don't know anything about surfing. I will continuously try to learn it. But the one thing that I want you to take away from this is that, well, in the end, if you really want to transform your organization, if you want to develop your culture, it's important to get data that's really meaningful, and that is behavioral data, because in the end you want to change behavior, and in order to understand if you change behavior, you need to look at it, you need to quantify it, right? And behavioral intelligence is a great way to do that. So if you're interested in learning more, feel free to approach me. We offer free trials and so on. So if you want to experience the technology, and there's many ways to do that. And thank you very much. Looking forward to the roundtables.